melt.
Process, but it's worth it, because your relationship with yourself is the foundation of everything else. And when that relationship becomes stronger, more honest, and more supportive, your entire life begins to reflect it. Chapter 3: Build resilience by facing fears, step by step. Fear is not the problem. Avoiding fear is the problem. Every time you avoid what scares you, you give it more control. You shrink your confidence, you limit your options, and you slow your growth. Fear does not leave on its own. It waits, it watches, and it grows when ignored. The only way to weaken fear is to face it, and the only way to face it without being overwhelmed is to do it gradually, step by step, moment by moment, challenge by challenge. Resilience is built through these steps, not through grand acts of bravery, but through steady, intentional movement toward discomfort. There is no secret formula to becoming fearless. You don't need to erase fear to live fully. You need to learn how to keep moving, even when fear is present. Resilience is not a trait you are born with. It's a skill you build when you stop backing down from the things that make you nervous, insecure, uncertain, or vulnerable. And this doesn't happen all at once. It happens when you start choosing action over hesitation in small areas of your life where fear has been quietly in control. Think about the situations you tend to avoid. It could be difficult conversations, unfamiliar environments, personal goals you've postponed for years, or decisions you delay because you feel unprepared. Every time you avoid them, you reinforce the idea that you are not capable. But when you take even a single step forward, something changes. You begin proving to yourself that you can act before you feel ready. That single act becomes a new message to your brain. It says, I can do hard things. I can handle discomfort. I can grow. The key is to start small and stay consistent. You don't need to confront your biggest fear tomorrow. That would only trigger overwhelm and reinforce failure. But you can take a smaller version of that fear and face it in a way that feels manageable. You can speak up in a moment you'd normally stay silent. You can try something new without needing to be perfect. You can sit with uncertainty without rushing to escape it. These are the actions that build emotional muscle. You take a small step, then another, and another, until what once felt impossible becomes familiar. Every time you take a step into something difficult, you teach your nervous system that you are safe. This is important. Fear often tricks your body into reacting as if you are in danger, even when you are simply uncomfortable. When you take calm, steady action in the face of fear, your brain starts to update its response. It learns that discomfort is not the same as danger. That distinction is where courage begins to form, not as a lack of fear, but as a new understanding of it. Resilience is also built by changing how you talk to yourself during these moments. When you feel fear rising, your self-talk matters more than ever. If your inner voice says, you're going to fail, you will hesitate. If it says, this is too hard for you, you'll retreat. But if it says, you've handled hard things before, or this is just one step, not forever, you gain momentum. The words you use in the moment shape how far you go. You don't need loud confidence. You just need steady support from within. Fear often attaches itself to a story about what might go wrong, what others might think, or what you might lose. Most of these stories are exaggerations. They are worst-case scenarios written in panic. One of the best ways to break fear is to ask yourself, what is the actual risk here, and can I handle the outcome if it doesn't go well? Usually the real answer is yes. You might be uncomfortable, but you won't be destroyed. You might feel awkward, but you'll
A
recover.
woman.
When you face that truth, fear begins to loosen its grip. You also need to be honest about how fear
That is no
disguises itself.
problem.
Sometimes it looks like perfectionism, where you wait until conditions are ideal before taking action. Sometimes it looks like procrastination, where you distract yourself with easier tasks. Sometimes it looks like overthinking, where you stay stuck in preparation and never begin. Recognizing these patterns allows you to interrupt them. It allows you to stop waiting for the fear to go away and start acting despite it. There's a kind of confidence that only comes from doing the thing you thought you couldn't do. It doesn't come from imagining it or talking about it. It comes from taking the step and seeing for yourself that you are capable. That kind of proof changes something deep inside. It becomes a foundation that can't be shaken easily, because once you've seen your own strength, it becomes harder to believe the voice that tells you you're not enough. Resilience is also about recovery. Not every step forward will go smoothly. Sometimes you'll fall. Sometimes you'll hesitate. Sometimes you'll backtrack. That's not failure. That's part of the process. What matters most is how you respond afterward. Do you judge yourself, or do you regroup? Do you shut down, or do you reflect and try again? Resilience grows in the way you treat yourself after the fall. It's not about how fast you bounce back. It's about not giving up on yourself in the middle of the mess. The truth is, you don't build strength by avoiding fear. You build it by walking through it with clarity and courage. Not to prove something to the world, but to prove to yourself that you're not fragile, not weak, and not limited to the past. Each time you show up for yourself when it's hard, you become more grounded. You become someone you trust. And that trust turns into power, power that no one can take from you. There is no perfect timeline for this process. Some fears will take days to overcome. Others may take years. That's okay. The point is to keep moving, to keep facing the edge of what feels safe and stepping beyond it, even just a little. Even if your hands shake, even if your voice cracks, because the goal is not to feel ready. The goal is to act anyway. You don't have to feel fearless to be brave. You just have to move forward with your eyes open and your heart steady. The more you face fear, step by step, the more life begins to open up. You say yes to opportunities that once seemed out of reach. You speak your mind when it matters. You stand your ground in difficult moments. You take on challenges not because they're easy, but because you've stopped letting fear make your decisions. And that shift changes everything. Changes how you feel in your own body. It changes how you relate to others. It changes how much of your potential you allow yourself to explore. You deserve to live a life that is not ruled by hesitation. You deserve to make choices from strength, not avoidance. And that kind of life doesn't begin with one big leap. It begins with one small act of courage, repeated over and over, until fear becomes just another part of the journey, not the one steering it. This is how you build resilience. This is how you take your power back. And this is how you begin to trust yourself in ways that no fear can ever undo. Chapter 4. Prioritize your needs without guilt or hesitation. There comes a time in life when you have to stop waiting for permission to take care of yourself. You've spent years considering other people's needs, juggling responsibilities, and putting yourself last. You've learned to be strong for everyone else while quietly neglecting your own voice. But strength isn't about self-sacrifice without limits. True strength is knowing when to step back and say, I matter too. And the truth is, your needs are not a burden, an inconvenience, or a sign of weakness. They are valid. They are human, and they deserve to be met without guilt or hesitation. You don't need to apologize for needing time alone. You don't have to explain why you want to rest instead of overextend yourself. You don't owe anyone justification for choosing peace over chaos or boundaries over burnout. Yet somehow, many people carry the belief that prioritizing their well-being is selfish. That belief didn't come from nowhere. It was likely shaped by years of being rewarded for putting others first, and criticized when you finally said no. But the cost of constantly neglecting yourself is heavy. It leads to exhaustion, bitterness, and a quiet loss of joy. That's not noble. It's harmful. If you've been taught that your value is tied to how useful you are to others, it can feel uncomfortable to start meeting your own needs. But discomfort is not a reason to stop. It's a sign that you're doing something different, something necessary. Prioritizing yourself doesn't mean you love others any less. It means you are learning how to include yourself in the care you so freely give. Means you're done believing that your well-being only matters when there's nothing else to do. You deserve to have space to breathe without rushing to fix everything around you. You deserve to take breaks without feeling lazy. You deserve to say no without defending your decision. These are not luxuries. They are essentials for a balanced and meaningful life. And no one else is going to protect those essentials for you. That responsibility is yours, and it's time to take it seriously. Start by being honest with yourself about what you actually need, not what you think you should need, not what others expect you to need, but what genuinely nourishes you. Maybe it's solitude, maybe it's support, maybe it's more structure or more freedom, maybe it's fewer commitments or deeper connections. Whatever it is, give yourself permission to name it, because if you can't name it, you can't protect it. And if you don't protect it, no one else will. This isn't about becoming rigid or self-centered. It's about becoming clear. When you know what you need and act on it, you show up in your life with more presence and less resentment. You stop running on empty. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop quietly tolerating things that drain you just to keep the peace. And in doing so, you create a life that's more honest, more fulfilling, and more sustainable. It's not your job to make everyone comfortable at the expense of your own peace. You are not responsible for managing everyone else's reactions to your choices. You are only responsible for making sure those choices are true to what matters most to you. Sometimes people won't understand. Sometimes they'll push back. That's okay. Let them feel what they feel while you stay rooted in your truth. Your needs don't require approval. They require attention. You might notice guilt rising up when you start putting yourself first. That guilt is a conditioned response, not a moral compass. It's a sign that you were taught to ignore yourself, not a sign that you're doing something wrong. When guilt shows up, don't run from it. Recognize it. Talk to it. Tell yourself, I am allowed to care for myself. I am not wrong for needing rest, peace, or space. Then act anyway. The more you practice this, the quieter the guilt becomes. It's not about getting rid of guilt overnight. It's about not letting it dictate your decisions. Prioritizing yourself also means being clear about your boundaries. If something doesn't align with your values or drains your energy, it's okay to decline. You don't need to over-explain. A simple, respectful no is enough. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors that help you decide what enters your life and what stays out. They protect your time, your energy, your focus, and you are allowed to have them, even if others don't like them. Sometimes prioritizing your needs will require disappointing people. That's hard, especially if you're used to being the dependable one, the helper, the person who always comes through. But you are not a machine. You are not an endless resource. And anyone who truly values you will understand when you need to take care of yourself. Those who don't understand are showing you that their comfort matters more to them than your well-being, and that's useful information to have. You're also allowed to want more ease, more support, more fulfillment. You don't have to settle for just surviving. You don't have to accept exhaustion as a way of life. You can choose to create a life that feels good to wake up to, a life where you are not constantly running, constantly fixing, constantly proving, a life that includes you at the center, not just on the edges. Taking care of yourself is not something you earn. It's something you are always worthy of, simply because you exist. You don't have to reach a certain level of success or wait for the right moment. You can start today by asking yourself, what do I need right now? And giving yourself permission to honor that, even in small ways, especially in small ways, because those small acts of care add up. They build trust with yourself. They remind you that you are not an afterthought. As you begin to prioritize yourself, you may find that some things start to fall away. Commitments that no longer serve you, relationships that take more than they give, patterns that kept you stuck. Let them fall. You're not losing anything important. You're clearing space for what truly matters. And what matters most is that you are no longer abandoning yourself to be accepted by others. You don't need to hustle for your worth. You don't need to exhaust yourself to be seen. You are allowed to be a full human being with needs, limits, desires, and dreams. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to rest without earning it. And you are allowed to live a life that feels good, not just one that looks good on the outside. You have spent enough time waiting to be chosen. Now it's time to choose yourself, to protect your peace, to honor your needs, to stop feeling guilty for doing what keeps you whole. This is not selfish. This is wise. This is necessary. And this is the beginning of a life where you don't just survive. You finally get to thrive. Chapter 5. Develop daily habits that nurture your mental health. Feeling better mentally isn't about chasing big, overwhelming changes. It's about showing up for yourself in the small moments, over and over again. There's a quiet kind of power in doing something kind for your mind every day. You might not see the shift immediately, but over time, these daily habits begin to shape how you think, how you feel, and how you respond to the world around you. You start to feel more grounded, more balanced, and more in control. Not because life is suddenly perfect, but because you've taken steps to care for the part of you that carries everything, your mind. Your mental health doesn't need grand gestures. It needs steady attention. It needs you to be honest about what supports you and what drains you. When you wake up in the morning, your first thoughts often set the tone for your day. So instead of diving straight into stress or comparison or distraction, give yourself a moment of quiet. Breathe deeply. Stretch slowly. Drink some water. Remind yourself, I'm allowed to start slow. I don't have to rush to be worthy. These are simple actions, but they signal something important. You matter, even in the stillness. Throughout the day, mental wellness is shaped by what you consume, not just in food, but in thoughts, conversations, and information. Pay attention to how you feel after watching certain videos, reading certain posts, or talking to certain people. If something leaves you anxious, tense, or self-critical, that's a signal to create distance. You don't have to fill your mind with noise. You are allowed to be selective. You're allowed to protect your peace. Instead, seek out things that calm you, inform you, inspire you. Follow voices that speak to your growth, not your insecurity. Movement also plays a role, not because of how it changes your body, but because of how it shifts your state of mind. You don't need to do intense workouts unless you want to. A walk around your block, some light stretching, or even dancing alone in your room, can reconnect you to your body and lift your mood. Movement releases tension that often lingers after stress, and it gives you a way to express yourself without words. It reminds you that you are alive, present, and capable of movement even through difficult emotions. What you say to yourself each day also matters more than you think. Most people walk around with a harsh inner voice, one that criticizes, doubts, and shames. You might think you're being realistic, but often you're being unnecessarily cruel. Begin to notice that voice. Notice how often it speaks, then challenge it. Not with fake positivity, but with balanced truth. If your mind says you're failing, you can respond with, I'm doing the best I can, and that counts. If it says you're not good enough, you can say, I may struggle sometimes, but I still have value. The goal is not to erase every negative thought, but to stop believing them without question. Build small check-ins into your day, even if it's just 2 minutes. Ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Don't try to fix or change the feeling immediately. Just acknowledge it. Let yourself be honest. If you're overwhelmed, say it. If you're sad, name it. Emotions lose their grip when we stop pretending they don't exist. They become manageable when they're seen, and you are the one who must see them first, before expecting anyone else to understand. Taking time for silence, even in short bursts, is another habit that helps create mental space. You don't need a meditation cushion or a perfect setting. You just need a few minutes without distractions, where you can pause and return to your breath. In those moments, you remind yourself that not everything needs an immediate reaction. Not every thought is urgent. Not every feeling has to lead to action. In silence, you learn to listen, not just to the world, but to yourself. Sleep is also a foundational part of mental wellness that often gets ignored or sacrificed. Create a wind-down routine that tells your body and mind it's safe to rest. Turn off devices, dim the lights, do something that relaxes you. Read, take a warm shower, listen to calming music. Sleep is not wasted time. It is necessary repair. And your brain cannot function clearly if it is always deprived of rest. Respecting your need for sleep is one of the most underrated acts of self-respect. Another supportive habit is journaling, not for the sake of producing anything perfect, but to get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper. When you write regularly, you begin to notice patterns. You begin to see what keeps coming up. You start to hear your own voice more clearly, and that awareness gives you the power to respond to life more intentionally instead of reacting on autopilot. You don't have to write for hours. A few honest sentences a day can help you release what's weighing on you. Connecting with others in meaningful ways is also part of nurturing your mind. That doesn't mean forcing yourself to socialize when you're drained. It means making time for people who see you clearly, who support your growth, who accept you as you are. Even a short, real conversation can remind you that you're not alone. Make time for these connections. They are part of your emotional fuel. They don't have to be constant, but they do need to be intentional. Lastly, mental health is strengthened by giving yourself something to look forward to. Each day, no matter how full or difficult, should have at least one small thing that brings you joy. Maybe it's a favorite snack, a song you love, a peaceful walk, or a moment to sit in the sun. These are not meaningless details. They are lifelines. They remind your brain and body that life is not just about survival. It's about small joys that anchor you through stress and uncertainty. You don't have to master all of this at once. You don't have to be perfect. What matters is consistency. What matters is showing up for your mind in ways that build strength over time. It's okay to have days where you forget, days where things feel too heavy, but as long as you return to yourself, You are moving in the right direction. These daily habits are not chores, they are choices. And each time you choose them, you're building something stronger inside you. You're telling yourself, I am worth the effort it takes to feel better. And you are, always. Chapter 6. Set clear boundaries to protect your energy. It's hard to thrive when your energy is constantly being pulled in directions that drain you. When you don't have boundaries, people start to treat your time, your kindness, and your peace as things they can access anytime they want. And it doesn't take long before you begin to feel resentful, tired, or invisible. That's why setting clear boundaries is not selfish. It's necessary. You are not here to exhaust yourself or everyone else. You are here to live in a way that respects your own limits and honors your own needs. Saying no can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to saying yes just to keep others happy. But you can't keep giving from a place of emptiness. There comes a time when you have to ask yourself, is this helping me grow or is this taking something from me? I can't afford to give right now. That's where boundaries begin. They start with that question. They begin with paying attention to how you feel after interactions, after obligations, after stretching yourself too thin. Your body often tells you the truth before your mind admits it. Tension, headaches, emotional burnout, these are signals, and they deserve your attention. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly when you decide to protect your energy. A simple, I can't do that right now, or that doesn't work for me, is enough. The people who truly care about your well-being won't need you to justify every decision. They'll respect your limits, even if they're disappointed. And if someone consistently pushes against your boundaries, it's worth asking what they really want from you, connection or control. You don't owe anyone constant access to your emotional availability. You are not a bottomless well. You are a human being who deserves space to breathe. Sometimes, boundaries mean stepping back from people you love. That's hard. But love without boundaries turns into self-sacrifice. It's not about cutting people off. It's about creating enough distance to protect your peace. You can love someone and still say, this is what I need to feel safe. You can care deeply and still choose space. It doesn't make you cold. It makes you honest. And in the long run, honesty builds healthier relationships than silent resentment ever could. Boundaries also mean choosing how much of yourself you give to situations that don't feel aligned. Not every conversation deserves your full emotional investment. Not every conflict needs your participation. You get to decide what drains you and what feeds you, and that decision will look different for everyone. Some people need solitude to reset. Others need time away from certain environments. Some need limits around social media or work hours. Whatever your version of protection looks like, it's valid. You are allowed to need different things than the people around you. There's power in pausing before you commit. When someone asks something of you, give yourself permission to say, let me get back to you. This gives you space to check in with yourself. Do you have the time? Do you have the energy? Do you even want to say yes? You're not required to agree just because someone asks. Every yes you give should come from a place of intention, not guilt, not fear, not obligation. If saying yes to them means saying no to your own well-being, then it's not a real yes. It's a quiet betrayal of yourself. Boundaries aren't just about saying no to others. They're also about saying yes to yourself. That might look like blocking off time for rest without apologizing for it. It might mean ending a call when the conversation turns toxic, or refusing to carry someone else's emotional burden just because they expect you to. Every time you set a limit, you are reinforcing the belief that your energy matters, that your presence is not to be taken for granted, that your mind and heart deserve peace. There will be people who don't understand your new limits. Some might feel rejected. Others might get upset. That's okay. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your job is not to manage their emotions. It's to honor your own. You're not here to keep everyone comfortable at the cost of your own discomfort. You're here to live with clarity, with peace, and with purpose. And that means making choices that sometimes disappoint others in order to protect yourself. Even in work or family dynamics, you are allowed to set boundaries. You can communicate your limits with firmness and kindness. I'm not available outside these hours. I don't want to discuss this topic anymore. Please don't raise your voice when speaking to me. These are not confrontational statements. They are direct and respectful. They give others a chance to adjust, but they also create a clear standard. Without that clarity, people will continue to assume that your time and energy are always available. You have to teach others how to treat you by showing them what you accept and what you don't. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. Boundaries become second nature. You stop feeling guilty for choosing yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that don't respect you. You begin to take up your rightful place in your own life. And from that place, you begin to relate to others more honestly. You stop pretending to be okay when you're not. You stop agreeing to things that leave you depleted. You show up as your whole self, someone who respects others, yes, but who also demands the same in return. You are not responsible for fixing everyone. You are not required to absorb every problem. It is not your duty to be the emotional anchor for everyone around you. You can offer support without abandoning yourself. You can be kind without being used. You can care deeply without sacrificing your peace. That balance takes practice, but once you learn it, you begin to feel lighter. You start to breathe deeper. You start to feel like yourself again. Remember, your energy is a limited resource. You don't get more of it by running on empty. You protect your energy by choosing where it goes. You protect it by saying no, by walking away when needed, by listening to your own needs first. That is not weakness. It is strength. That is not selfishness. It is survival. And the more you protect your energy, the more of it you'll have to share with the people and projects that truly matter. That is how you live fully, by giving from a place of fullness, not exhaustion. That is how you honor yourself, and you deserve nothing less. Chapter 7. Practice gratitude to increase your self-appreciation. There's a quiet power in gratitude that most people overlook. It's not about pretending everything is perfect or ignoring the hard parts of life. It's about choosing to look at yourself and your life through a softer, more honest lens. When you start practicing gratitude deliberately, something in you begins to shift. You stop focusing only on what's missing, what's wrong, or what hasn't happened yet. Instead, you start recognizing what's working, what's improving, and what already exists within you. And when you do that consistently, it deepens your self-respect and renews your sense of worth. Gratitude allows you to see yourself as more than your flaws. It helps you focus on your growth, your resilience, your effort, even when the outcomes haven't turned out exactly the way you hoped. You begin to appreciate how far you've come instead of constantly measuring how far you still have to go. That shift changes everything. It helps you move from self-criticism to self-recognition, from comparison to acceptance, from doubt to acknowledgement. And when that becomes a daily practice, your relationship with yourself becomes more supportive, more grounded, and more compassionate. It's easy to forget your own progress when your focus is always on the next goal, the next challenge, or the next thing you need to improve. Gratitude makes you pause long enough to notice what's already good. And that's essential, because without appreciation, you end up living like you're always behind, always inadequate, always catching up to someone else's version of success. But when you practice gratitude, you start feeling more whole in the present moment. You stop rushing to prove your worth, and you start realizing that it's already there. Every day gives you a chance to notice something small but meaningful. Maybe you handled a difficult moment with more calm than usual. Maybe you showed up for yourself in a way you didn't last year. Maybe you rested without guilt. These may not seem like big victories, but they are. Acknowledging them reminds you that growth is happening. You are learning, healing, changing, even if it's not loud or obvious. Gratitude trains your mind to notice those moments and hold on to them, and those moments build your self-worth from the inside out. Self-appreciation doesn't come from waiting for someone else to notice your value. It comes from noticing it yourself, from recognizing your efforts even when no one is watching, from thanking yourself for not giving up, from honoring the version of you that kept going even when things were uncertain. Gratitude for your own courage, your patience, your discipline. It rewires the way you speak to yourself. You stop being your own critic and start becoming your own ally. Sometimes we think gratitude is only for the good days, but it's especially important on the hard ones. When things feel overwhelming or disappointing, that's when gratitude becomes a form of self-rescue. You might not be able to change everything in that moment, but you can still anchor yourself in something real. Your breath, your strength, the fact that you're still trying. That quiet acknowledgement helps you find perspective. It reminds you that even in difficulty, there is still something solid within you, and that belief builds self-trust, even when the outside world feels uncertain. Gratitude doesn't mean ignoring pain or pretending you're okay when you're not. It means choosing to see the whole picture, not just the hard parts. You can be struggling and still be grateful for your support system. You can be grieving and still appreciate the moments of peace. You can feel lost and still recognize the parts of yourself that are steady. This is what makes gratitude powerful. It holds space for complexity. It teaches you that you're allowed to feel more than one thing at once, and in that space, your self-awareness deepens, your emotional strength grows. You begin to trust your ability to handle life, even when it's messy. The more you practice gratitude, the more your self-perception changes. You begin to focus less on what you think you should be and more on who you already are. You notice the good qualities you bring into the world, the ways you support others, the quiet ways you show up even when things are tough. And when you appreciate those parts of yourself, your confidence grows, not because someone told you to be confident, but because you're finally seeing what's been there all along. Start simple. Begin by thanking yourself for just one thing each day. Maybe it's getting out of bed when it felt hard. Maybe it's sending a message you were afraid to send. Maybe it's showing restraint when you wanted to react. As you build this habit, you'll start to see more. You'll realize you're stronger than you thought. You'll feel more connected to yourself. You'll begin to understand that self-appreciation isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice. Write it down if you need to. Speak it out loud. Reflect on it in quiet moments. What did you do today that deserves acknowledgement? What quality in yourself are you proud of? What challenge have you quietly endured? This isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. You are allowed to give yourself credit. You are allowed to be proud of your growth. You are allowed to be kind to yourself, not later, but now. You'll find that gratitude also softens your relationship with others. When you start seeing the good in yourself, you're less likely to resent or compete with others. You stop needing external validation to feel worthy. You become more generous because you're no longer operating from lack. You give love without needing it back. You support others without draining yourself. Gratitude makes space for deeper connection, not just with the world, but with yourself. This is not about forcing yourself to be positive all the time. It's about creating a habit of noticing what's working, noticing who you're becoming, noticing that your life, while not perfect, still has moments that deserve your full attention. And in that attention, you'll find clarity, you'll find strength, you'll find appreciation, and that appreciation will turn into self-respect, which turns into self-belief, which eventually becomes self-love. You don't need a big reason to feel grateful. You just need to be willing to notice the truth that's already there. You've made it through things you once thought you wouldn't. You've grown in ways that once felt impossible. You've shown up again and again, even when you didn't feel ready. That's worth acknowledging. That's worth celebrating. And the more you remind yourself of these truths, the more natural it becomes to appreciate who you are. You stop waiting for the world to see your worth, because you already see it yourself, and that is where your strength begins. Chapter 8. Take responsibility for your own happiness now. No one else is coming to save you from unhappiness. That truth might sound harsh at first, but it's also deeply freeing. The moment you stop waiting for others to fix your life, your past, or your emotions, you begin to reclaim your power. Happiness is not something someone can give you, and it's not something you stumble into by accident. It's something you build with small choices, daily decisions, and a deep commitment to stop abandoning yourself. If you keep tying your happiness to someone else's actions, words, or approval, you'll always feel out of control. And that's a hard way to live. Always waiting, always hoping, always being disappointed. You've probably heard people say, do what makes you happy, but they don't talk about the part where you have to get clear on what actually makes you feel fulfilled, grounded, and at peace. That's the work most people avoid. They chase distractions, they blame their circumstances, they point fingers at their past. But nothing really changes until you pause and say, I am responsible for how I feel, and I'm ready to do something about it. That shift isn't just mature, it's transformational. You begin to understand that happiness doesn't come from what you have. It comes from what you allow yourself to believe, say, do, and feel. It's tempting to think life owes you something. After all you've been through, it would make sense to want life to be easier, to expect better treatment, to wish someone would just see you and love you the way you need. But that waiting keeps you stuck. The truth is, life won't always be fair. People won't always show up how you want them to, but your peace of mind cannot depend on that. When you stop outsourcing your happiness, you get to decide how your story moves forward. You get to choose your priorities. You get to say no to what drains you and yes to what aligns with you. Taking responsibility means asking yourself hard questions. What are you tolerating that's making you bitter? What habits are keeping you stuck? What beliefs are making you feel like you're never enough? Happiness doesn't grow in denial. It grows in clarity, and clarity takes honesty. No more pretending you're okay when you're not. No more hiding behind excuses. No more hoping things will magically change without your participation. This is your life. This is your moment to show up for it. Not perfectly, not all at once, but with intention, courage, and ownership. It also means letting go of the fantasy that someone else will come along and understand you so fully that all your pain will disappear. That kind of connection sounds beautiful, but it places an impossible weight on others. You were never meant to rely on another person to heal wounds they didn't create. It's your job to sit with yourself, understand your needs, soothe your inner conflicts, and offer yourself the acceptance you've been waiting for. When you do that, relationships become healthier. You stop clinging, you stop resenting, you begin relating from a place of fullness rather than lack. Every time you blame someone else for your unhappiness, you give them control over your peace. That's a heavy price to pay. It might feel satisfying in the short term, but over time it drains your energy. Instead of growing, you stay locked in frustration. Taking responsibility doesn't mean taking blame for things that were outside your control. It simply means you're no longer waiting for external conditions to create internal peace. You're learning how to respond to life rather than react to it. You're choosing to build your happiness from the inside out, one conscious step at a time. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing how often you've betrayed yourself to make others comfortable. You stayed quiet when you should have spoken up. You lowered your standards because you didn't want to seem difficult. You put yourself last again and again, hoping that self-sacrifice would earn you love. But happiness doesn't grow in self-abandonment. It grows when you finally say, I matter too. When you stop asking for permission to take care of yourself. When you stop waiting for someone to validate your right to peace. There's no perfect time to begin. You don't need everything figured out. You just need to decide that you're done making your well-being dependent on what happens around you. That choice alone changes your path. It helps you notice your patterns. It encourages you to set boundaries. It pushes you to do the hard things, like saying no, walking away, starting fresh, or holding yourself accountable. These steps aren't easy, but they are necessary if you want to stop surviving and start living. Happiness is also about what you allow into your life. The conversations you engage in, the content you consume, the thoughts you entertain. If you fill your mind with constant comparison, negativity, and pressure, don't be surprised when peace feels distant. You have to protect your mental space like it matters, because it does. You can't grow joy in a mind that's constantly at war with itself. You have to create space for stillness, for kindness, for truth, and that means learning to talk to yourself with compassion, even on your worst days. There's a difference between comfort and happiness. Comfort can keep you in familiar pain. It can trap you in habits that feel safe, but slowly destroy your spirit. True happiness often requires discomfort at first, the discomfort of change, of boundaries, of self-reflection, but that discomfort leads to real freedom. The kind of freedom where you wake up and no longer feel like your life belongs to everyone else. You begin to live on your own terms. You begin to trust your instincts. You stop performing for approval and start living for peace. When you choose to take responsibility for your happiness, you stop wasting time. You stop waiting for perfect circumstances. You stop explaining yourself to people who refuse to understand. You stop holding on to what you've outgrown. You begin to release the guilt of choosing yourself. And in that space, you rediscover your strength. Not the strength to push through or pretend, but the strength to be real, to feel, to change, to rise. This is your reminder. You are not powerless. You are not broken. You are not too late. You have more control than you think. You don't need to ask anyone for permission to be okay. You just need to begin. Today. Now. Not when things are easier. Not when everything feels certain, but exactly as you are, with everything you've got. Take one step, then another. Own your choices. Own your growth. Own your peace. That's how happiness is built. Slowly, honestly, and entirely by you. Chapter 9. Cultivate forgiveness toward yourself and past mistakes. You cannot keep punishing yourself for the things you didn't know back then. You were doing the best you could with the understanding, the tools, and the awareness you had at that time. Looking back with regret may feel like you're holding yourself accountable, but there's a difference between accountability and self-punishment. Real growth doesn't come from endlessly criticizing yourself. It comes from being honest about your mistakes, learning what you needed to learn, and then allowing yourself to move forward without dragging the weight of guilt everywhere you go. Forgiveness isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about acknowledging what happened without using it as a weapon against yourself every day. Some wounds you carry weren't even created by others. They were built by your own repeated thoughts, reminders of moments where you felt you failed, fell short, or didn't measure up. And over time, those thoughts became internal stories, stories that say you're not worthy, not capable, not good enough. But none of those stories are facts. They're conclusions your mind drew when you were hurting and confused. You can't heal if you keep repeating those stories like they're your identity. If you spoke to a child the way you speak to yourself when you reflect on your past, would they feel safe? Would they feel loved? Chances are they'd feel scared, ashamed, and broken. That same inner child still lives in you. They still feel what you say. They still carry the sting of the words you use against yourself. The path to healing isn't paved with perfection. It's built on patience, and forgiveness is a form of patience, a deep, quiet decision to stop picking at the same emotional scabs. You might think that holding on to your mistakes will make you more responsible, that if you keep them fresh in your mind, you'll never mess up like that again. But that's fear disguised as control. You don't need to live in fear to grow. You need awareness, and awareness comes when you can look at your past with compassion, not condemnation. It takes strength to say, I did things I'm not proud of, but I'm not going to let those things define who I am now. That's not denial. That's evolution. The truth is, you will make more mistakes in life, and some of them might hurt others. Some might hurt you, but if you never give yourself room to be human, you'll live in a constant state of emotional paralysis. You won't trust yourself to make decisions. You won't take healthy risks. You'll shrink your life out of fear of repeating the past. That's not freedom. That's survival. Forgiveness opens the door to freedom. It allows you to breathe again, to feel again, to try again, without the voice of shame shouting over your every step. Think about the people you've forgiven in your life. Why did you let them go? Why did you decide their actions no longer needed to sit in the front row of your heart? Maybe it was love. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was time. Whatever it was, you knew deep down that continuing to carry resentment was too heavy. The same is true for your relationship with yourself. Self-forgiveness doesn't mean excusing everything you've done. It means acknowledging that no amount of suffering will rewrite the past. And if suffering won't change it, why keep suffering? There's a version of you that existed in your past who was hurting, lost, scared, or angry. That version may have made poor decisions, but would punishing them now bring healing? Or would it only create more inner division? You don't need to justify everything you've done. You just need to understand it. Look at who you were, what shaped your choices, and what you've learned since then. Then ask yourself, do I deserve peace now? If your answer is yes, then you have to give yourself permission to let go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. You may still carry memories. You may still feel regret. That's normal. But regret is not meant to be a permanent state of mind. It's meant to point you toward better decisions, deeper wisdom, and greater empathy for yourself and others. You become kinder when you stop fighting with your past. You start showing up in a more grounded way. Your energy softens. You become someone you can trust again. You're not the only one who's made mistakes, but you might be the only one who's still paying for them every day in your mind. That inner punishment cycle needs to stop, because it's keeping you from being fully alive. The shame you carry may feel like it protects you, But it also isolates you. It keeps you from connecting deeply with others, from receiving love without suspicion, and from experiencing joy without guilt. Forgiveness lets the sunlight in again. It says, I won't let old pain run my life anymore. Give yourself space to feel all the emotions that come up when you think about your past. Don't rush to numb them or hide from them. Feel them, understand them, and then gently place them down. Say to yourself, I am allowed to grow from this. I am allowed to move forward. Your worth doesn't disappear because of your lowest moments. If anything, your willingness to face those moments and still choose healing speaks to your strength. It means you're no longer interested in staying stuck in shame. If you wait until you're perfect to feel worthy, you'll wait forever. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be real, to be open, to be willing to heal. That starts with forgiving the version of you who didn't know what they know now. That version wasn't your enemy. They were trying. They were learning. They were surviving. And now you get to do more than survive. You get to live fully, knowing that your past doesn't own you. So, talk